seem to be out of focus. My dear friends, welcome to this Sutta study portion of our Sanghamitta Day observance. Some of you know that every Sunday at this hour, we have a Sutta study, Sutta discussion. So we're holding a similar format to that. We will begin this afternoon by sitting together in silent meditation for 15 minutes, and then we'll go to the sutras after that. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Dear friends, you will have 3 bhikkhunis in the panel today. Kaccayana will begin by explaining why today's collection, the Sacca Saṁyutta, is especially important for the bhikkhunis.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Sanghamitta Day celebration. Ongoing, this is our afternoon session. We had a lovely morning session and we'll have an evening session later. So today is the lunar anniversary of the arrival of the great Arahant Bhikkhuni Sanghamitta Theri in Sri Lanka, carrying with her a cutting from the Bodhi tree under which the Buddha had his great awakening. So she brought that with her to Sri Lanka, and it's still growing there today in Anuradhapura. So it's an important day for Sri Lankan Buddhists because it represents the arrival of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. And it's an important day for bhikkhunis because of such an inspiring elder and made world history. So we want to honor her. And so it's a special day for that reason. It's also a Sunday, and this is our usual sutta study time. So we wanted to see if we could connect Sanghamitta and our usual sutta study. And so we chose a set of suttas that have a particular significance to the story of Sanghamitta. And so let me tell you a little bit of that story. Sanghamitta was a daughter of the Emperor Ashoka from India. And she was a bhikkhuni, she was an arahant. She had an elder brother named Mahindhathera, who was also fully ordained bhikkhu and an arahant. And he went to Sri Lanka as a Dhamma missionary. Sri Lanka at that time was not Buddhist. He was the first one to go there. And he encountered the king of Sri Lanka, who was so impressed with him that the king and many members of his court and his family and Sri Lankan society in general, it seems like, were very impressed, and they developed faith in Mahindhathera and in the teachings of the Buddha. So he stayed in Sri Lanka and was teaching. And one of the queens, Queen Anulā Devi, came to listen to teachings from Mahindhathera, and along with 500 women from her retinue, her attendants. And he gave them a set of 3 particular teachings that are recorded in the Dipavamsa, the great chronicles of Sri Lanka. And after listening to these teachings, Queen Anulā and her 500 attendants all attained stream entry. And this is significant because it was actually the first attainment of any stage of the path that happened in Sri Lanka. So in the same way that we celebrate the first attainment of Anya Kondanya in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and the Devas rejoice and so forth, this is the first time that happened in Sri Lanka. So Queen Anulā Devi and her women were the first to wake up in Sri Lanka, even though others had already developed faith in Mahindhathera and the teachings of the Buddha. And following this, Queen Anulā and the women wished to ordain, to become bhikkhunis. And it was because of their wish that Mahindhathera sent back to India to have his sister come, because he could not give the ordination to the bhikkhunis, he could only give it to bhikkhus. His sister, let me bring her here and she'll bring the branch of the Bodhi tree also. So these suttas that are recorded in the chronicles were the direct cause in some way of Sanghamitta coming to Sri Lanka. And that's why we thought they might be good to read today. The three groupings, we're not going to have time for all of them. It's the Peta Vatu, the Vimana Vatu, and the Sacca Saṁyutta. And so today we're just going to look at some selections of the Sacca Saṁyutta. And Ayya Sobhana will tell us why the Sacca Saṁyutta is such an excellent collection.
Yes. The Sacca Saṁyutta is a chapter in the Mahavagga, which is a section of the Samyutta Nikaya, which is a collection. You could call it the Samyutta Nikaya is the collection of connected discourses. Within the Sacca Saṁyutta, the jewel in the crown of that chapter is the sutta on turning the wheel of Dhamma, the very first sutta that the Buddha preached, which caused the very first disciple to obtain awakening from hearing the discourse. And that's surrounded by a large number of smaller, shorter verses. I wanted to emphasize, because sometimes we get the teachings in a kind of like a scattered way. We may hear a Dhamma talk and the teacher is wanting to make a point, and so he picks out one sutta or even part of a sutta to make a point that's relevant to the discourse. But these chapters were collected together for the purpose of memorizing, and it would have been a practice of the ancient bhikkhus and bhikkhunis to memorize and recite over and over again the whole chapter. So there's a way that the chapter hangs together. You may see it's even difficult for Westerners to read some of these chapters in the Samyutta Nikaya because they seem to repeat the same things over and over again. And in reading a book, that may seem boring and you may want to like skip over the repetitive parts. But when it's an oral tradition and you're listening to it, it would be like hearing the chorus of a song. And the chorus of a song becomes more and more powerful, more and more resonant with many repetitions. In a way, you could say it would be like a theme and variations. So there's one theme, in this case it's the Sacca, the Noble Truths, the Arya Sacca, the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha. And each sutta is saying the same thing with one little variation. And so in that case, bit by bit, you have an accumulation of ideas that are associated with your understanding of the Sacca Saṁyutta. You might wonder why it would happen that the first sutta that the Buddha taught to his disciples is contained in the third out of 5 Nikayas in the entire Pali Canon. And within that, in the 4th section, in the last section of the book, and within that section, in the last chapter. So it's the 12th chapter of the 4th section of the 3rd collection in the Pali Canon. And yet this was the first sermon that the Buddha taught. We believe that, or scholars guess, I heard this and I like this idea. It would be like when we file things in a file cabinet. The first thing you put something in the folder, and then the next thing that comes, you put it in front, and then you keep putting the newer material in front. And so, well, that's one idea. in any case, this is a very early teaching. It's very fundamental. And I think as you listen, you can imagine how if you didn't know and you heard these teachings dancing around the same basic ideas, you would begin to be convinced that you would gain faith and that you would have the inspiration to go forward on this path. Now, I introduce Ven Brahmavara to start teaching the sutta.
Thank you so much, Anna, for your introduction. So the first sutta that I've chosen in this collection is number 34 in the Great Book. In the text that we have the Bhikkhu Bodhi Samyutta Nikaya translation. It's page 1859. It's quite a hefty tome.
Very end.
1859, and it's the teaching number 34, which is called Clothes. Bhikkhus, if one's clothes or head were ablaze, what should be done about it? Venerable Sir, if one's clothes or head were ablaze, to extinguish one's blazing clothes or head, one should arouse extraordinary desire, make an extraordinary effort, stir up zeal and enthusiasm, be unremitting, and exercise mindfulness and clear comprehension. And the Buddha replies, Bhikkhus, one might look on equanimously at one's blazing clothes or head, paying no attention to them. But so long as one has not made the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths as they really are, in order to make the breakthrough, one should arouse extraordinary desire, make an extraordinary effort, stir up zeal and enthusiasm, be unremitting, and exercise mindfulness and clear comprehension. What for? The noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. The noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the cause of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, and the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering.
Do you want to say any more?
I could just say that I chose this sutta because it's so striking. Yes, if your head or your clothes are ablaze, that would feel very important. And the most pressing concern would be to put the fire out. And elsewhere in the suttas, the Buddha describes our predicament as like the house is on fire or our hair is on fire. And the sense of urgency that we need to arouse in our practice is equivalent to the sense of urgency of a person whose head is on fire, whose house is on fire, who has to get the fire out quickly as possible. So for me, this is really powerful sutta, because the Buddha is really saying, never mind if your head's on fire or your clothes are on fire. There's something even more important and urgent than that, which is to penetrate, which is to understand, which is to make time to really take on board these Four Noble Truths and to get out of the blazing fire of samsara. So I find this really powerful teaching, and it's almost a little bit humorous. But it also the very serious message within it.
The next sutta that I chose is on a similar theme. It's the next one, number 35, 100 Spheres. Bhikkhus, suppose there were a man with a lifespan of 100 years who could live 100 years. Someone would say to him, "Come, good man. In the morning, they will strike you with 100 spears. At noon, they will strike you with 100 spears. And in the evening, they will strike you with 100 spears. And you, good man, being struck day after day by 300 spears, will have a lifespan of 100 years and will live 100 years. And then, after 100 years have passed, you will make the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths, to which you had not broken through earlier. It is fitting, bhikkhus, for a clansman intent on his good to accept the offer. For what reason? Because this samsara is without discoverable beginning. A first point cannot be discerned of blows by spears, blows by swords, blows by axes. And even though this may be so, bhikkhus, I do not say that the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths is accompanied by suffering or displeasure. Rather, the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths is accompanied only by happiness and joy. What for? The noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the cause of suffering, the noble truth of the way leading, of the cessation of suffering, the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the cause of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the cessation of suffering. And an exertion should be made to understand this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So, yes, so similarly to what Ven Brahmavara was mentioning, it's a very strong image. The idea that being, just tortured 3 times a day in a terrible way for 100 years is worth it if you have this benefit at the end of it. So similarly, like ignoring your clothes being on fire is more important to practice. It's worth it despite all the pain of this 100 years. This sutta I like, though it goes a little further and says that although there is all this pain, the realization is accompanied only by happiness and joy. So it's not just the pain. There is also this other side of the freedom from that, which is accompanied only by happiness and joy. So, yes. There.
You could mark it a little bit by screwing it so this way.
Oh, thank you. Good to know.
The sutta that I chose, it's a bit about the preconditions for being able to understand these Four Noble Truths. Now, Ven Brahmavara and Ven Kaccayana have spoken about the urgency once one really begins to get a hold of the first Noble Truth, understand what the dukkha of the round of samsara is, then that spiritual urgency grows up. The very first sutta in this chapter, at Savatthi, the Buddha said, bhikkhus, develop concentration. The bhikkhu who is concentrated understands things as they really are. Concentration is the Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation for samadhi, sama samadhi, which doesn't mean concentration because you're holding onto things with a tense grip, but rather that the power of all the faculties of meditation are unified. The mind is unified and not distracted, and one is obtained a powerful stillness, which is able to experience a temporary reprieve from the unwholesome states of being caught up in craving, anger, and delusion. And then if for a minute, for a second, for 10 minutes, for an hour, one is able to have a break from that mind of craving and delusion through concentration, then on emerging, one would be able to understand these things as they really are. Now I'm going to jump ahead to the second sutta. These two are very much in parallel. The second one is called seclusion. It says, bhikkhus make an exertion in seclusion. A bhikkhu who is secluded understands things as they really are. And what does he understand as it really is? He understands as it really is. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Bhikkhus make an exertion in seclusion. A bhikkhu who is secluded understands things as they really are. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the cause of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the cessation of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. In these two short passages, the emphasis is on understanding, and that understanding will be your right view, which is the kickoff, the starting point for the Noble Eightfold Path for the entire remainder of one's path of practice. So you could say that the Eightfold Path is a spiral path, not just going from point A to point B, but going around at a more refined, significant level as one comes around again and again. So some kind of understanding about these Four Noble Truths is what gets us started. The word that Bhikkhu Bodhi translates as seclusion, one might jump to the conclusion that that's referring to viveka. That's a very important Buddhist idea, which is also often translated as seclusion. In this case, that's not the word in Pali. It's patisalane. Sujato, Bhante Sujato, translate that as meditate in retreat. And so we know that many Westerners and many modern people, even lay people, had the opportunity to take meditation retreats, to be away from the house, away from all their responsibilities, away from their distractions, away from their relatives, away from the telephone, away from the computer, away from all the things that they enjoy, and just be in this kind of unnatural circumstance of being in a room, keeping in complete silence with a group of other people, keeping in complete silence, sitting alone and suffering the ordeal of being alone with one's own mind, of being with one's own thoughts without any distraction for the period of the retreat. And then possibly also having a chance to experience the, you could say, the bliss of knowing that certain kind of difficult suffering patterns in life do drop away during meditation. So what do we want to be secluded from? Typically, I don't know whether dukkha or sukha is more fundamental to human experience, but a lot of the time people go running after pleasure because there is something that's tiresome and painful. And the more pain they experience or the more danger they experience, the more upset they experience, or the stronger the drive is to run after things that are pleasant. And even the pleasant things are more pleasant. The more you suffered, the more pleasant the pleasure is because of the contrast. And in this way, this is like the energy that keeps us going around and around in samsara. So these two sets of instruction, first to develop samadhi, to develop tranquil meditation, to stop the mind from running around, to train the mind to first stay within a particular domain of a meditation procedure, and then gradually to become quieter and quieter, and then to leave behind all those habits is a precondition for having the opportunity to even see what in the world the Blessed One is talking about, what we are talking about when we say this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, the escape from suffering, and the way to the escape.
So the next sutta that I've chosen is number 42, which is page 1865. 1865. It's called The Precipice. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha on Mount Vulture Peak. Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Come, bhikkhus, let us go to Patibana Peak for the day's abiding." "Yes, Venerable Sir," those bhikkhus replied. Then the Blessed One, together with a number of bhikkhus, went to Patibana Peak. A certain bhikkhu saw the steep precipice off Patibana Peak and said to the Blessed One, "That precipice is indeed steep, Venerable Sir. That precipice is extremely frightful. But is there, Venerable Sir, any other precipice steeper and more frightful than this one?" "There is, bhikkhu." "But what, Venerable Sir, is that precipice steeper and more frightful than that one?" "Those ascetics and Brahmins, bhikkhu, who do not understand as it really is, this is suffering. Who do not understand as it really is, this is the origin of suffering. Who do not understand as it really is, this is the cessation of suffering. Who do not understand as it really is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They delight in volitional formations that lead to birth, in volitional formations that lead to aging, in volitional formations that lead to death, in volitional formations that lead to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Delighting in such volitional formations, they generate volitional formations that lead to birth, generate volitional formations that lead to aging, that lead to death, that lead to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Having generated such volitional formations, they tumble down the precipice of birth, tumble down the precipice of aging, tumble down the precipice of death, tumble down the precipice of sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. They are not freed from birth, aging, and death, not freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair, not freed from suffering, I say. But, Bhikkhu, those ascetics and Brahmins who understand as it really is, this is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They do not delight in volitional formations that lead to birth, nor in volitional formations that lead to aging, or to death, or to sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Not delighting in such volitional formations, they don't generate volitional formations that lead to birth, or aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Not having generated such volitional formations, they do not tumble down the precipice of birth, nor tumble down the precipice of aging, nor tumble down the precipice of death, nor tumble down the precipice of sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. They are freed from birth, aging, and death, freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair, freed from suffering, I say. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So like Sobhana was saying, I really feel this is like a sort of, has a power in the repetition, and it's like a poem, and it's like a drum beating. It's like a call in the very way that it's phrased. And you can imagine people learning this and repeating it and listening to it again and again. And I love that quality of it. And the message is very powerful too. And I find the image of the falling, it's a really frightening image. And I don't know if any of you listening or here have a fear of heights, but I have a bit of a fear of heights. And it's a strange thing that can happen for me is when I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, the feeling is it would be so easy just to fall down, just to go over the edge. And it's that almost like physical awareness of the impending death that is a possibility in that moment that just really does something for me. And so this sort of really speaks to me because it gives me the sense of urgency which is coming through in all these suttas, or many of these suttas in this chapter. The sense of we really need to direct our attention in this way to see the causes of suffering, to rather than turning away from suffering, to actually turn towards it, which is very much it's very counterintuitive for us. We're so programmed, we're so conditioned to ignore and put off suffering and turn away from it, in short. And yet in the turning away from the way things are, or the sort of unwillingness to accept the reality of our situation, we are actually approaching the edge of the cliff. We are actually approaching the precipice. So, it's like there's no winning that way. There's no way out other than to turn and to face our predicament as human beings. Our predicament being that we're born to die. We're mortal. And this life may have its peak moments, but it also has great suffering. It's impossible to escape. Even if you have a wonderful life for 100 years with no illness or no difficulty, suffer good fortune, you will still die at the end of that time. So there is no way of escaping the First Noble Truth. So why not focus all our energy on really understanding our predicament? So this sutta is kind of scary, and it's it's a call, really. And as Ven Kaccayana said about the last sutta that she read, it has the scary part, the negative, the sobering, somber side, but it also has the message that if we do direct our attention skillfully, then of course there is the way out of suffering, and we can be free from samsara. So it's a very hopeful message.
So we've heard some scary similes about our predicament. And we've heard that there's great benefit to finding a way out of our predicament. We've heard from Ven Sobhana about the pointing towards the method, towards getting out, which is in that particular sutta, samadhi and seclusion. And then I was thinking that I would go over, well, what are the Four Noble Truths that we are about to wake up to? However, I see Ven Sobhana has it queued up over there. So maybe I'll go to a different one that I think sheds some light on this, and I'll let Ven Sobhana tell us in a moment. What are these Four Noble Truths?
Do you want to take 13?
I have another one that sort of fits my theme.
Okay,
So, okay, so I'm going to read 30. Page 1857, if you have the book here. And this one, I think, is beginning to point towards the nature of the understanding that one can come to when practicing in the appropriate way, which Ven Sobhana will tell us about in a minute. So, on one occasion, a number of elder bhikkhus were dwelling among the Chaitiyans at Sahajati. Now, on that occasion, when the elder bhikkhus had returned from their alms round after their meal, they had assembled in the pavilion and were sitting together when this conversation arose. Friend, does one who sees suffering also see the origin of suffering, also see the cessation of suffering, also see the way leading to the cessation of suffering? When this was said, the Venerable Gavampati said to the elder bhikkhus, friends, in the presence of the Blessed One, I have heard and learned this. Bhikkhus, one who sees suffering also sees the origin of suffering, also sees the cessation of suffering, also sees the way leading to the cessation of suffering. One who sees the origin of suffering also sees suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. One who sees the cessation also sees the other three. One who sees the way leading to the cessation of suffering also sees suffering, also sees the origin of suffering, also sees the cessation of suffering. So this one was interesting to me because I think often I've heard it said, oh, the First Noble Truth, that's the one that's easy to see, right? Because we all have some kind of suffering in our lives. Something, it can be big, it can be small, it can come and it can go, but there's something that we can recognize easily, obviously, as suffering in any lifetime. And that is sometimes mentioned as like, okay, this is the entryway into seeing the Four Noble Truths. And I think that's true, but also the sutta is pointing out that I think it's pointing to a certain level of realization that they're talking about that's required to become free. It's saying if you see suffering truly, if you really understand it, then you also see these other three things. You can't really understand suffering unless you also understand how it's caused and how it can end and was the way leading to its ending. And similarly, if you see any of the others, if you see, I don't know, maybe the Noble Eightfold Path somehow, then you're going to see also the benefit of walking that path, which is that you can cease to suffer by ending the cause of suffering. And, if you know what the cause is, then you also know what the symptom is. Right? So it's all connected, and the liberating insight into it sees all of them together. So it's not a surface level, like, oh, this is suffering, I feel sick today. I'm seeing dukkha. You are, but it's not quite the level that it's talking about, that it's the liberating level of understanding. So that's a starting point, but then to look deeper and deeper, and that's what you need, the deep concentration and seclusion, in order to see those things more deeply than you necessarily can in your everyday life. So.
I shall read Sutta number 13, the aggregates, which is on page 1847 in the book. Bhikkhus, there are these four noble truths. What for? The noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. And what, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of suffering? It should be said, the five aggregates subject to clinging. That is, the form aggregate subject to clinging, the feeling aggregate subject to clinging, the perception aggregate subject to clinging, the volitional formations aggregate subject to clinging, and the consciousness aggregate subject to clinging. This is called the noble truth of suffering. And just to pause for a second, in what we have heard so far, we have heard about the suffering of the round, the danger of rebirth, the sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair that's caused by just by the life cycle and by being fearful of being reborn again and again into this painful, sorrowful world. And now here, it's a different kind of description, which I like to think of as being in Buddhist psychology, the Buddhist summary of abnormal psychology in 5 words. That these 5 processes and how they work together and give cause to each other and support each other in this machinery of clinging, and become, when they're all linked up together and working together, becomes almost unstoppable by us. That then this is how suffering works. If you study psychology, you can see that the majority of what they teach in Western psychology is about understanding why people suffer. And perhaps not as much about the way to true happiness. Likewise, if you looked at, I was an English major in English literature, most fiction, and a lot of poetry is also exploring why we suffer. If you looked at history, the history of the wars and politics and kings and the rise and fall of countries, the rise and fall of civilizations, it's also about suffering. In fact, almost all of the subjects that you could major in college are really just investigating suffering. But this is a very powerful analysis of what suffering is and how it works. And what bhikkhus is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. It is this craving which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. This is called the noble truth of the origin of suffering. So this is where the fire is. This is where the energy is. This is where the gasoline that makes the machinery of dukkha take off. You could say this is the rocket fuel for dukkha. This craving that provides the energy, and this idea, this delight and lust. There's a distinction in the suttas between what is for our true welfare, or what is happiness, sukha, and then different Pali words for delight and lust. In that case, you could say that the kind of true happiness, or the happiness of meditation, which we should not be afraid of, has a quality of stability, has a quality of security, and is coming like inclining in the direction of equanimity and calmness. Whereas this other kind of delight and lust, it also feels good when you got it, but it's inherently unstable. So the time that food is the most delicious is when I'm really starving. And then just, the food is like so delectable, or whatever else a person could be addicted to if they're deprived of their addiction. And then they got this powerful, powerful impulse to go towards something, to grasp something. That's what's spoken about here. So the safe kind of pleasure is the pleasure going to equanimity, and the unsafe kind of pleasure is the pleasure that keeps moving us forward towards grasping after something. And then the sutta says, what bhikkhus is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering? It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up, relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is called the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. So our happiness is not based on what we get, it's based on what we give up. Based on letting go. And what bhikkhus is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering? It is the Noble Eightfold Path. That is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is called the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. And then these bhikkhus is the Four Noble Truths. Now we come to the clincher, the punchline, what to do. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering. An exertion should be made to give up what is the cause of suffering. An exertion should be made to realize the cessation of suffering. And the exertion should be made to develop the way leading to the cessation of suffering.
So I think the next one I'd like to share is number 41, which is on page 1864. Called Reflection About the World. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, once in the past, a certain man set out from Rajagaha and went to the Sumagada lotus pond, thinking, I will reflect about the world. He then sat down on the bank of the Sumagada lotus pond and he reflected about the world. And then, bhikkhus, this man saw a 4-division army entering a lotus stalk on the bank of the pond. Having seen this, he thought, I must be mad. I must be insane. I've seen something that doesn't exist in the world. The man returned to the city and informed a great crowd of people, I must be mad. I must be insane. I've seen something that doesn't exist in the world. They said to him, how is it, good man, that you're mad? How are you insane? And what have you seen that doesn't exist in the world? Well, here says, I left Rajagaha and approached the Sumagada lotus pond, etc. I saw a 4-division army entering a lotus stalk on the bank of the pond. That's why I'm mad. That's why I'm insane. And that's why what I've seen because what I've seen doesn't exist in the world. Surely you're mad, good man. Surely you're insane. And what you've seen doesn't exist in the world. Nevertheless, bhikkhus, what that man saw was actually real, not unreal. Once in the past, the Devas and the Asuras were arrayed for battle. In that battle, the Devas won and the Asuras were defeated. In their defeat, the Asuras were frightened and entered the Asura city through the lotus stalk to the bewilderment of the Devas. Therefore, bhikkhus, do not reflect about the world, thinking the world is eternal, or the world is not eternal, or the world is finite, or the world is infinite, or the soul and the body are the same, or the soul is one thing, the body is another, or the Tathagata, the Buddha, exists after death, or the Tathagata does not exist after death, or the Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death, or the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death. For what reason? Because, bhikkhus, this reflection is unbeneficial. It's irrelevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and it does not lead to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. When you reflect, bhikkhus, you should reflect, this is suffering, and you should reflect, this is the origin of suffering. You should reflect, this is the cessation of suffering. And you should reflect, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. For what reason? Because, bhikkhus, this reflection is beneficial. It's relevant to the fundamentals of the holy life. It leads to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So I chose this sutta because I find it quite amusing, but like everything, I find many suttas quite amusing, but they always have profound teachings for us. And for me, this one feels important because it's really an encouragement to direct our attention in certain ways and not to direct our attention in other ways. And it's so easy, I think, to become distracted in this world with all the sources of input, information, entertainment, endless and fascinating kaleidoscope of news, views, And this image of the 4 divisions of an army entering a lotus stalk, for me, it does 2 things. First of all, it expands my sense of what's possible, because the Buddha said, oh, this is actually a real event that was witnessed. So there's a lot we don't see, we don't know. How much of reality can we really perceive? So that there's that side of it for me. But it also leads me to consider the world that we live in, where there's so much kind of entertainment that is fantastical, that takes us so far from the Four Noble Truths and fascinates and scintillates the mind. And how the precepts, the 8 precepts, if we're fortunate enough to consider taking those precepts and following that kind of discipline, how we can really spare ourselves an awful lot of wasted time and confusion and delusion. And so for me, this sutta, I mean, it's 2,550 years old, but it's really relevant. And I don't know if the Buddha foresaw the movie world, the special effects, Hollywood and so forth, but it just, for me, it's an encouragement to not seek further stimulus, and whatever's coming in through the sense doors, to be ready to renounce and to let go, and to maybe even try to reduce in some ways the kind of inputs that are coming in, because life's so short, and the Four Noble Truths are best investigated within the framework of this mind and body. And it's very difficult to investigate them when the mind is reaching out and getting distracted by the many, many ways in which that can happen. So, reflection about the world.
What I'm going to read is number 39, page 1862. Indra's pillar. Bhikkhus, those ascetics or Brahmins who do not understand as it really is, this is suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering, etc. They look up at the face of another ascetic or Brahmin, thinking, this worthy is surely one who really knows, who really sees. Suppose, bhikkhus, a tuft of cotton wool or kapok, light, wafted by the wind, had settled on an even piece of ground. An easterly wind would drive it westward, a westerly wind would drive it eastward, a northerly wind would drive it southward, a southerly wind would drive it northward. For what reason? Because of the lightness of the tuft. So too, bhikkhus, those ascetics or Brahmins who do not understand it as it really is, this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They look up at the face of another ascetic or Brahmin, thinking, this worthy one is surely one who really knows, who really sees. For what reason? Because they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. But bhikkhus, those ascetics or Brahmins who understand as it really is, this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They do not look up at the face of another ascetic or Brahmin thinking, this worthy is surely one who really knows, who really sees. Suppose, bhikkhus, there was an iron pillar or an Indra's pillar with a deep base, securely planted, immobile, unshaking. Even if a forceful blast of wind comes, whether from the east, the west, the north, or the south, that pillar would not shake, quake, or tremble. For what reason? Because the pillar has a deep base and is securely planted. So too, bhikkhus, those ascetics or Brahmins who understand as it really is, this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They do not look up at the face of another ascetic or Brahmin thinking, this worthy is surely one who really knows, who really sees. For what reason? Because bhikkhus, they have clearly seen the Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of suffering, cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So I really like this image. We've had all the scary images, and this is one that's just the possibility of being really deeply grounded, of being really able to know for yourself. So not being like the tuft of cotton floating around in the air, speculating about, is the world eternal or not? Or is this the teacher, or is that the teacher? Is this the way to practice? Is that the way to practice? Being blown this way and that sort of lightness of not really knowing, that can come to an end. It is possible to know and understand these things for yourself, and that is the thing that gives the great basis of stability, of not needing to run around like that anymore. And just, to me, that's a very strong and positive image of, again, what is the benefit? Why are we doing this? Because we don't want to be just floating forever. And this, incidentally, this is the sutta that's behind my favorite verse of the Ratana Sutta, like Indus pillar planted in the earth. Shall we recite it?
Yes.
Okay, will you lead us?
I'm just dealing with it.
Okay.
Yatinda kilo patavingsito siya Chatubhivate piya sampakampiyo Tatupamang saporisan valami Yo ariya satchaniya vichapasati Idampi sankhe
Ratanam panitam
Etena satchena suvati hotu.
So, like Indra's pillar, firmly planted in the earth, cannot be blown or shaken by the four winds. So is the superior person, I say, who has definitely seen the noble truths. In the Sangha is this precious jewel. By this truth may there be well-being.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Well, I would like to stop right here because it's such a great rep. And remembering again that this noble truth of suffering should be fully understood. It's not something to be changed, not something to be agitated about. Just look and see is what it is. In a way, the more we experience dukkha, once we got a hold of this pattern, the more we experience dukkha, the more the mind will go to calmness, to just say, oh, this is it. Because of causes and conditions, this is what we got right now. And then it's the cause of suffering where the exertion comes about. That if we know, it's not that easy to know, but if we can say, I'm suffering, what is it that I'm grasping to? What am I holding on to? What am I craving for? And is it even possible to let go of that, to abandon that? The cause of suffering should be abandoned. And then with that abandoning, the cessation of suffering should be realized. Even that is more difficult. You would think this is sort of like just natural, that when you let go of some craving, to whatever extent you let go of some craving or let go of some clinging, you'll experience what a relief it is, and you'll experience cessation to some extent. you obtain some kind of a fundamental reorganization of your psychology such that these things are dropped in a way that they're not going to come back again. And then you can really experience that. Actually, for those who are still not yet awakened, still somewhat afflicted by ignorance all the time, we get some relief as a result of hearing Buddhism or getting involved with this practice. And our suffering is decreased. Our suffering is cut in half because we're not feeding it in the way that we used to. But people can take the relative mental health that they've gained for granted and not actually realize, appreciate, and be grateful. Like, just in this moment, I don't hate anybody. Well, unless I was explicitly developing that contemplation, I might not notice that I was, went for a whole 10 minutes or a whole 10 days or a whole 10 years without hating anybody. But if we know it, then we can realize the end of dukkha to whatever extent we've realized that cessation of craving. And then the last, the Noble Eightfold Path, is to be developed. This is the complete roadmap. It's what is trustworthy, what is stable, and what will bring us close to Nibbana, right up to the entryway to awakening. And so this is our presentation, and we've left 10 minutes for those who would like to comment. On our regular Sunday program, we give a bit more time for participation. But since this is a special day, I gave a special program with 3 speakers. But any of the regulars who join us online, if you're happy to speak out, you're welcome to put your hands in Anjali to let us know that you'd like to speak and unmute yourself. Or you could use the hand, raise the hand as signal. As well. And that's her picture. That doesn't necessarily mean. Oh, Anavidita, would you like to add something? Please help us.
And then I wanted to thank you all. It was just wonderful to join and to see you all and to hear this wonderful Dhamma. I'm very grateful. I have nothing in specifically to add at the moment, I think.
Thank you. Any others want to add a comment and let us know? We have a lively group that participates a lot. Ananaya.
I did just want to thank you for all of you for this, and including all of the bhikkhunis who have participated. It was really very, very inspiring to see how what is being done all throughout Europe. I mean, this was just really very impressive. The level of engagement and the kinds of programs that are underway and that are in progressing. I was also very touched by the level of participation that was demonstrated at each of the projects. Those of the monasteries that are either have just purchased a property or who have perhaps had it for a few years, but the engagement of their local communities and the acceptance that they find was really very inspiring. And I think I may be wrong, incorrect in which monastery, but I believe it was to Lorien. It might have been one of the others in Germany, but where they were doing Pindapat almost like 5 days a week or more, and others were doing 3 days a week. I mean, this was just really quite heartwarming and very impressive that there is such work being done and so much that's progressing. It was really, truly an incredible day for that. And also, I'm always impressed, either when I've had the occasion to travel to Europe, I'm always so impressed that Europeans speak generally more than their native tongue, at least one other language, and they often are conversant in 2 or 3. So I'm very impressed with that in the level, which makes it easy for us to communicate when we have occasions like this. So I send kudos on that level too. And then for some of the monasteries where they were actively engaged in translation and translating into from Pali then into their native language also. So yeah, the outreach and the level of engagement was really something to behold. So I thank all of you for that.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Here's a comment from Janaki, who says, thank you for this lovely programming. May all of you be protected, guarded, and blessed by the Noble Triple Gem, Theravum Sernai. And here's the message from our founding abbess, Ayatata Loka. Listening to this powerful group of teachings from the Sacca Saṁyutta, I just thought, no wonder Anulā Devi and her companions who heard these teachings wanted to enter monastic life. Diane, please help.
I just wanted to ditto everything Ananea said, and to also add that this afternoon, the sutta study, I loved seeing more bhikkhunis each reading them. I loved when you chanted together. And I also liked how you picked them and framed it. So letting us know really that suffering is actually very scary, because we usually do the opposite of what would help us. And so to recognize the urgency and the scariness of it, and at the same time that it can be done, and that there is a way, and that there are people doing it. So you really covered that all. But yes, we have to do a lot of hard work. It's very serious. It's not, you just can't do it every now and then. It's a big endeavor, but we have lots of support. So, and I love the rising support of all the bhikkhunis, worldwide. So I'm very grateful. Thank you all so much.
Let us close by giving respect. The closing thought.
May I say something?
Yes. Okay.
So just wanted to say, yes, I feel like these teachings are something worth celebrating, especially Queen Anulā Devi, her awakening. This is something worth celebrating, and the continuation of these teachings over time through Sanghamitta Theri, through the bhikkhunis in Europe today, who we talked to this morning, all worthy of celebration. And I wanted to mention that our celebration is continuing this evening, where we will move to Asia and have our founding abbess Ayatata Loka will be leading the program with some of the very prominent senior bhikkhuni preceptors of Asia, who have recently founded the United Theravada Bhikkhuni Sangha International Initiative. And so we'll be hearing about that. And so this continuation, we'll have that program this evening at 6 o'clock California time. And that would be 3.5 hours from now, wherever you are. just to give that little plug. The celebration continues this evening.
Sadhu.
Sadhu,
Sadhu. Sadhu.
Anumodami.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Anumodami.
Araham
Sama Sambuddho Bhagavan Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadini
Svakato
Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami
Supartipanno
Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh. Should have slide.